Well, at least what comes to mind immediately is the way he was passionate about everything he did.
He's the heart ng komikero.
No, Big Brother.
Full of wisdom.
How do you...
Mentor. Siya yung isa sa mga pioneer in terms of video blogging. Dun sa video niya yun, nakita ko rin kung sino yung mga kasama niya sa mga video niya. Si Raipo, si Jonah, si Johnny. And then I saw Raipo personally sa office. And then sabi ko, familiar sa akin yung mukha niya. And then he introduced me in a way kay Gerry na ito si Gerry, ganyan-ganyan. And then punta ka dun sa San Pablo para ma-meet mo siya, para maging komikero ka rin. The second version is me going to San Pablo to actually meet the komikero himself. But starstruck ako. Ang dating sa akin is medyo snotty. Pero nung nakilala mo na siya, eventually, that's just Gerry being Gerry. Siya yung konsensya ng grupo. I had the opportunity to sit beside him and, talk to him. When our conversations are very, very short as far as Gerry is concerned. Sabi ko, kumusta? Gumano lang ako sa kanya. Okay lang. Tapos, titipigan niya sagot sa'yo na, okay lang. Sakto lang, sabi niya gano'n. Gusto ko sabihin sa kanya na, well, I'm hoping that, you're doing better or ganito. Kasi it doesn't exactly, hindi yun yung itsura niya. That was the last conversation I had with him after that. And I think that was also the last komikero meeting that we had with his house. Namimiss ko yung lugar, to be honest. I would say na as far as Gerry is concerned, doon niya pinakita sa akin yung value ng pagiging tao. Whether you are at the limelight or not within the limelight, it's how you deal with people. And I think hindi nawala yung core niya. I think I admire best about him is yung pagiging niya totoong tao. Whether he was a celebrity at some people or not, kung whatever is Gerry that you're seeing, that's him.
One day he brought me to Sampaloc Lake to meet Gerry. But I had been a fan of Gerry Alanguilan since Wasted, which I started reading in college. So there were many interactions with Gerry pre-Sampaloc Lake that were mostly awkward fangirling at conventions.
There's an interview by Leonard Banaag about Gerry. And at the end of the write-up, there's this invitation from Gerry na if you're a comic book aficionado, and so just email him for direction. And so, yeah, after reading that, I quickly emailed Gerry. He responded the day after, or that night.
Interestingly enough, I met Gerry through Leonard Banaag, a friend of mine. And I think it was in 2006, one of the Comic-Cons held at Bahay na Alumni, when Leonard just said, "Do you want to meet Gerry?" And I'm like, "Really? You can meet Gerry?" And so it was this rather awkward introduction where I was like, "Yeah, I've been such a fan for so long, blah, blah, blah." So that's how I met Gerry. And I'm pretty sure he forgot about me after that. About a year later, Gilbert Monsanto's second son was born. And we were invited to the baptism of the baby. And Gerry was one of the godfathers. And then Gerry had even brought us from Gilbert's house back to where we could get a ride. But the interesting story there was before we managed to leave Gilbert's place, we ended up getting lost. Gerry's driver drove deep into the heart of Rizal province when we should have ended up in Makati. I'm not sure how that happened, but we just realized that there were a lot of rice fields around us, and Gerry was going, hindi na ata tama itong pinupuntahan natin.
From what I read done sa article that Leonard wrote, doon lang ako nag-base, and looking at the picture na nakaganon si Gerry, it's like, harmless naman. So, yeah, first impression, intimidating actually. Pero, kasi when he arrived, he was like this hulking guy. And then, hat, what you call that? Baling hat, nipa hat.
Yung native hat.
Yung native hat. And then he was walking towards us. And then he smiled.
Gerry had the amazing ability to be both intimidating and approachable at the same time. We bought a copy of Elmer and asked him to sign it. So I don't think he saw us approach, but he did see us eventually when he looked up to see who was asking him to sign the book. And he just looked at us, no words. He looked at me, he looked at Mike, he looked at me again, he looked at Mike, and then he held his pen, and then he looked at the book, and then said, kanino ko, parang kanino ko isusulat ito or something
And
like
then
that.
and then he gave us that.
Yeah, he gave us such a searching stare with this half grin. And then Johnny, I remember, was at the back beaming at us. So it's like, I did that go well? I'm not sure.
So after signing, I just gestured. I think I was in a dark spot, yung couple of years back, I think. So I posted something on sabi ko, a bit depressed and on Facebook. I posted something, and then siguro that night he messaged me, pare, kamusta ka? Ano nangyari? Ganun lang. Sabi ko, okay lang ako, Gerry, okay na.
Personally, I'm not a comic book creator myself, but I think I would have never seen the scope, the scale, just the sheer amount of talent that was part of the Philippine comic book industry, the legacy of every single person who made up the industry. I would not have seen the scope and scale without Gerry, without that passion that I mentioned that he shared in his online blogs in the museum he eventually put up. When he organized the San Pablo Comic Con with you and Johnny, when he took to that stage and he spoke about how it's not true that Philippine comics died, you felt how much he believed in that. When Gerry said those words, you knew in your heart it was true.
I'm Neil Cervantes. I'm a colorist for storyboards and animatics. I encountered Gerry's name before sa indie comic na nabasa ko sa UPLB news. Is that a newspaper ba? Yung Crest Hut Bot Shop. Tapos tawa ako ng tao talaga. Aliw na aliw ako sa kanya sobra. Tapos tinandaan ko yun name, Gerry Alanguilan, ganyan. Pinakilala ko kay Johnny Danganan muna. Eventually, na-meet ko ikaw, Jonas, saka si Johnny sa agronomy yata yun. Tapos ayun, in-invite nyo ako sa Comic Hero meeting sa San Pablo Lake. Tapos doon ko unang na-meet si Gerry. Okay naman, although medyo takot ako sa kanya. Medyo na-intimidate ako sa kanya, parang suplado siya, pero I wasn't sure kasi siguro hindi ko lang siya talaga kilala pa noon. I remember yung time na yung in-invite niya tayo, tapos manood tayo ng Doctor Who. Nag-marathon tayo. And it was sobrang saya nung araw na yun. Tama rin kay Gerry na tuwa siya na sinishare niya yung isa sa mga favorite things niya. Sinishare niya sa atin. Pero sobrang nag-stick sa akin talaga ng memory na yun na nanood tayo sa kanila. Na-inspire din ako kay Gerry kasi isa siya sa mga una kong nakilala na talagang nasa loob ng comics industry, working with professionals, with yung mga the big names, tapos doing yung mga titles na makikita mo lang sa comics mismo at saka sa cartoons or the fact na nakakatambay, nakakasama siya, nakakausap siya, inspiring din. And
Ryan Toledo, and I'm currently an account manager for a certain web development company. Been with Comic Hero since the start. When I'm not at work, I'm a hobbyist. I paint, right? I do scale models. I do a lot of sci-fi geeky stuff. So before nung August, I was into checking out indie comics back then. And yung source namin ng indie comics was San Pablo, in one of the shops there. I picked up Twisted there. and read it, of course, and uh, nag-ano ako, na-amaze ako kasi comic book style, American comic book style yung art, and then ang ganda, ang lalim ng ano, ang lalim nung plot. So, nakita ko, taga sa Pablo rin pala yung author. Nakita ko sa UPLB sa DevCom na naghahanap sila ng comic enthusiasts within UPLB. So, hinanap ko tong si certain Mr. Johnny Danganan. Nasa kabilang department lang pala ng college namin. So, there was an instant connection between me and Johnny. And then sabi niya, Ryan, ba't di ka pumunta na San Pablo this Sunday? We're gonna have a meeting. So, sabi ko, hey, sige. Actually, hindi ko alam na isasama pala ako ni Johnny to meet Gerry. So it was like, oh my goodness, I'm going to meet this guy. Ito yung author ng comics na binabasa ko. So when I saw him, I said, oh my goodness, you're Gerry. Ganon. He's like a brother to me, actually. So, well, being the only guy in the family, sort of naganap ako ng big brother figure or little brother figure. So I found that in Gerry. Sabi ni Gerry, Raipo, gawa tayong video. Sa anong klaseng video? So, okay, ganito yung gagawin natin. Talagang impromptu lahat. May hawak siyang digicam noon. Tapos, sabi niya, kunyari nagbabasa ka netang 13. Tumaho ka. Okay, sige. Yan. O, tapos kunyari mag-aagawan tayo ng comics. Tapos kunyari sasapakin mo ako, tapos tabok ka sa labas. Seryoso ka dyan? Sabi ni Gerry, wag mo naman palapatin sa mukha ko. Pero nakakatawa talaga. Hindi ko talaga na-expect yan. Talagang napaka-candid, at this moment talaga yung paggawa namin ng Dahil sa 13. So yun talaga yung pinaka Gerry moment na naalala ko talaga dun sa taong yun. Na buhay pa siya. He was really somewhat of a mentor to me. Like, Raipo, wag ka lang ganyan, wag ka lang makontento sa buhay mo. Find things to improve your life, find things to be different, to be what you want yourself to be. Yun yung naalala ko sa kanya. One of those moments with him. Tapos, nung nawala siya, nung iniwan na niya tayo, naramdaman ko talaga para akong namatayan ng kamag-anak. So, ganun yung impact sa akin.